Good afternoon, Danvers residents. I'm Mark Zuberek, and I'm reporting for the topics of the town news. There has been a extensive discussion and all kinds of allegations made in regard to the school department handling of the Danvers boys hockey. I have resisted in commenting on this issue for the last 2 weeks because there was so much discussion going on with the residents, the mothers, the families of our school children, and the continuation of the school committee not coming forward with the information that's necessary for our community. Our community is facing allegations of the Danvers boys hockey team and the infractions that have happened over the last 20 years basically. I do not believe that this is the total story of what has been going on with the school department and the school committee especially. School committee is elected to pursue the teaching and education of our children. We need to hold them accountable for what is going on and what has been going on over the years. This is a flashpoint that was identified 18 months ago. This happened in 2020 at the graduation. There was an incident with the graduation team that flew a Trump sign during their parade because that's what we had to do at that time. The hockey team issue has been brewing for many, many months before that. The question I have is, why has it taken it so long to identify and provide information to the community, not just the teachers and the school committee, to the community? We are all responsible for the education of our children in this town. We have been patient with the school committee and the school department over the years because I have received many emails and articles that I have gathered. The question that has been the most impact on me is, the school department has been given much, and it is only right that much is demanded from them. The school department has been entrusted with much, so it's only right that much will be asked. The school department and the school committee has failed in sharing the incident with the community because without knowing what the facts are, I don't care about the names, but the facts of what has been going on, if it's not shared with the community cannot do anything about it. Because like the school committee has been identifying in their speeches, it's been swept under the rug. And I don't know if I was the one that started that, but it is true. So the problem that I see is that I attended the school committee meeting of last week, and there was an outpouring of comments, concerns, and allegations that have happened. I don't know the facts. I don't think anybody knows the facts. The school department is still reluctant to share that with the community. So the one thing that I wanted to do is share with you the clips from the meeting at the school committee and the concerns that parents have had. And what I like to do is go over this with you right now. And what I like to do is show you clip 1, which really identifies what the concerns of the school committee are. Now, today we have 2 new school committee members, and we have 3 additional members that some have been there for 20 years. So the problem is that we need to revitalize the school committee, and it appears that the new members have come forward and are trying to do something about it. So the history of this issue is not just 18 months ago, not just the article since Boston Globe has printed. And at the meeting that I attended, I was the only community reporter there. There was Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Boston Globe, and other reporters that came to see what is really going on in Danvers. So if we can run clip 1, I'll make more comments as we go along. David, clip 1, please. This.
Right, I suspect we're up and running. Welcome to the November meeting of the Danvers School Committee. We'll begin as we always do with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Danvers Public Schools mission statement. The Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. This meeting is being broadcast on Danvers Community Access Television. I hate to ask, is anybody in the audience also recording the proceedings? Okay.
We can't hear you.
I think I want to say Channel 7, 4, and 5, and citizen journalist Mark Zuberek. All right, anybody else?
I'm not recording, but is your mic working? I can hear you perfectly, but it doesn't seem like you're...
Is this better?
No.
Can you take your mask down when you speak?
I think those are mostly for TV. I'll try and talk loud. No one's ever accused me of not having a big mouth. So. All right. With that, we will turn to our agenda. And before we get into it, we all know that there are going to be a lot of questions and discussion tonight over the recent article in the Globe and things surrounding the recent article. And I know that there are a lot of passion in the room. So before we begin, when it comes time for public comment, I think people who by now know that they should sign up. I think everybody, I hope everybody that wants to speak has signed up. If you hear something and you decide you weren't intending to speak now, but you want to speak at the end of the meeting, that's fine too. Or the end of the public comment section, I apologize. We had overflow set up, but I don't know if we need it at this point. I think we're good right here. Our discussion really has to be held in a civil manner. Passion is admirable and even expected when you have any kind of an issue that really touches people, as I think this has. Passion is admirable, expected, and perfectly appropriate. Inappropriate language, personal attacks, things like that are not acceptable, and they are out of order. conduct that interferes with our being able to conduct the business of the meeting would also have to be considered. In summary, if your concern is for our students, your children, and for the town of Danvers and our district, I hope that we'll all model the behavior that we hope that our young people will show. As always, there will be a 3-minute time limit for speakers. If you're in the middle of a thought, I'll try and let you finish that thought, regardless of the time within reason. I also hope that if you plan to speak and someone else has essentially said what you were going to say, perhaps you can abbreviate your remarks so that we hear information that's new that you want us to share. That's going to be to your discretion. So with that, I'm going to ask for, as we always do, items of interest to the superintendent, school committee, and community. But we are going to start with the community at this point. I'm sorry, straight back to the school committee. So obviously we know the main item of interest for all of us. And I would like to start with Jeff.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Robin.
Yes, I'm going to pull this down so you can hear me a little bit clearer. So I just have a statement I'd like to read to the community. Now that a redacted version of the report is public, my focus still remains to work toward and create an environment in which our students can learn and thrive. Education doesn't always occur in a classroom. It also includes the extracurricular opportunities we provide them. We aim to give our students the skills to be successful in their lives beyond Danvers to compete in a global marketplace. The findings of the report are disappointing and unfortunate, but we must remain focused on the future, not the past. I was elected to the school committee in May. During my campaign, I spoke of the need to improve educational opportunities and being transparent about how we conduct ourselves. The findings of this report have not changed that focus. If anything, it proves we have a lot of work to do. I look forward to working with everyone in our community to ensure we learn from this and provide the best educational services our students deserve. With that, I would also like to motion at this time to put forth a vote to immediately put Dr. Dean on administrative leave while the school committee can ascertain the best path moving forward for administration and students.
There is a motion and no second.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I would see this motion as, because it involves personnel, the motion would be out of order. Having said that, the best and appropriate place for this to take place, the best discussion is going to be for an executive session. And I am reluctant to go into executive session now, but that is certainly a choice that can be made. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Can we go into an executive session sometime this week? Or immediately?
When you say immediately?
Make a motion.
Like right now?
Right now.
Yep.
Make a motion.
All right. We are going to briefly, I hope, adjourn, and we will go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues. Could you poll the committee, Diane?
Eric Crane? Eric Crane?
Yes?
Alpha Scomas?
Yes.
Wallace Campbell?
Yes. Robin Doherty? Yes.
Jeff Kelly?
Yes.
Well, you've seen the initial attempt by the new school committee members, Robin Doherty and Ms. Campbell, try to attempt to discuss the issue. However, from my past experience and from the laws that are in place in regard to meetings, open meetings, this was very unfortunate that the chairman allowed this to happen. Open meeting is supposed to have an agenda item for that particular item listed. And in this case, it was not. So my conclusion from this executive session that took place is that it was unlawful and it was not intended to discuss the issue that was brought up as the executive session item, to discuss and consider the impact of that motion. But it was meant to spend probably, what I gathered at the meeting, over a half an hour of discussion in preparation to addressing the issues that the school committee expected. This item should be contested with the Attorney General in regards to conducting open meeting, and in my opinion, it was unlawful, because what it did is allowed the school committee to convince themselves about what they're going to discuss next. So I believe that there is a open meeting law violation that has been filed, and it needs to be addressed very soon. However, if you notice at the end of this presentation, the school committee decided to conduct another executive session this past Monday, which was yesterday, during the same time frame as the special town meeting was being held. So I'll go into that at the end of this presentation. So if we go back to our article that was presented to us as a result of the Boston Globe presentation, article that they have put together, it's all related to the hockey team violations that they have encountered. And now what the article is coming back to haunt the school committee is that last fall, or even as late as January, I filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information request, for the topics of the town news, asking for the report and the results of the investigations that took place. Now, Arthur Skarmas will go into some more detail in regard to what has transpired, but the only reason this article showed up in the Boston Globe is because Boston Globe was financially and it was lawyered up to the point where they took the FOIA request that they filed to the court, and the court made them release a little bit more information than what I was able to get, because Topics of the Town News has been preaching and looking at the results of that FOIA request, which was totally redacted. And the $44,000 that they've spent on this lawyer that was hired to investigate the situation was totally wasted. So if we go on to clip number 2, we'll go back to the school committee meeting and see what they have actually come up with, because they took half an hour to get their thoughts together and presented to the audience. And there was an audience of approximately 40 to 50 people, plus another 10 or 15 news media personnel in the room. So it was well recorded. And the one thing that I want to talk about later on is, where the heck was the teachers union? Where the heck was the MIAA, which is basically now addressing the issue after 18 months? So the problem is communications are lacking, and the communications between the community and the school committee is nil. So if we go to clip number 2, David, I would appreciate it.
For executive session. Robin, do you have anything else to add to your statement beyond what you had already said? Because you have.
Nope, Mr. Crane, I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. Alice?
Yep, I'll read something I wrote. I do not believe appropriate action or discipline was taken following the independent investigation into the accusation of racism and hazing within our high school hockey program. It is unacceptable that not a single adult was held accountable. I believe with the lack of real action, we failed our students, teachers, parents, caregivers, and community members. We've been told that these actions do not reflect the core values, mission, and vision that we seek for our school system, but yet the lack of transparency and action says otherwise. As a parent, I sit here worried about what else has been hidden from us. We cannot accept no further action. I recognize that in order for all of us to move forward and focus on the safety and security of our school community, then we must hold an adult accountable for these accusations. Our current students and staff are suffering because of the inaction from our investigation. Finally, I want us as a community to acknowledge the victim who came forward. We all know that this was not isolated to you. I want to thank them for having courage. You're why we're here talking about this, and my hope is that it inspires action in us to be better and to do better for our Danvers school community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Arthur?
Yeah, I think that obviously most people that are here, and including some of us at this table, certainly don't know all that's happened over the past 15, 16, 17 months. So, and these were all part of the meetings that we've had over the course from last June until the present, including regular meetings, subcommittee meetings. The facts have been talked about consistently from meeting to meeting. And I think it's important to just kind of run through a timeline of events of what's happened over that period of time. So that's what I'm going to do. And again, nothing that I'm saying here is not anything that you can't find from previous things that have happened with our committee over the past 16, 17 months. But the events that were the gist of the Globe story began really on June 11th of 2020 during a senior car parade that involved and we talked about this before, the unfurling of a Trump flag at that particular event. What was happening with the hockey team, whatever was happened, obviously it had already happened. The season was long over. But the Trump flag incident resulted in a bunch of complaints from members of the community, families, and also resulted in one particular community member coming and calling the administration about some hockey allegations. And that was on June 13th. That was Saturday, June 13th. Saturday, June 13th, the high school administration and the central office team met with that particular individual, and the police department was informed. The investigation began from Monday the 15th of June until Wednesday the 17th of June. The administration carried out an investigation and spoke with 18 of the 22 players on the team. 4 did not participate. This was done with the high school administration team. The 5 coaches were interviewed by the central office. The investigation continued into July. It went to the police department at that time. The police department investigated. It went to DCF as required at that time. DCF did whatever they do as far as investigating the matter. And in the end, the investigation by the police department and by the school all ended around middle of July of 2017, July 17, 2020. At that time, the police department did not take any action. As part of that interview, or part of that investigation with the police department, all 15 players interviewed denied ever being assaulted or pressured to do anything as part of an initiation to the hockey team. All 15 players denied having any knowledge of any threats of actions by any member of the hockey team against another person that was based on person's race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Again, I'm not saying that what the individual, the victim has said is not true, but I'm telling you what we knew and what was going on at that particular time. The police department checked again with the AD's office. They determined that there was no action to take. DCF took no action. We determined at that time, the administration determined at that time that there'd be some appropriate discipline applied, and that it looked as though the matter was closed at that time. Again, based upon the information that we knew at that time. At that point, a few days later, maybe a month, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, there was another allegation by members of the hockey team that they were being bullied. That was investigated. Shortly after that, there were other new allegations that were seen on social media, and so that led us to our August 2020 meeting. At that meeting, and if you haven't watched it, I would urge you all to watch it. If you don't think we're serious about this, I would urge you all to watch it. And we did a couple of things. The primary thing that we did was authorized the school attorney to hire an independent investigator to investigate this matter further, to determine what happened and to also determine what needs to be done relative to the cultural issues in our school. We did that. That was sent over. It was done over a period of 5 or 6 months. At that meeting, we also urged also instructed the superintendent to continue on with the diversity and inclusion and equity and cultural issues that we had been working on since the new strategic plan, and that was part of that meeting also. Again, take a look at it, see what was going on. If you haven't seen it, you should. Over the course of the next several months, we had several meetings, and at each one of those meetings, we had an update as to what was going on with the investigation. We didn't do too much at that point in time, other than that, because we were waiting for the investigation to come out. The investigation came out in March, and in March, and by the way, the investigation, she was able to talk to probably about 23 of the 73 people that she wanted to. If you watch our meetings from August, September, October, November, December, January, you will find us all the time saying, please, if the investigator reaches out to you, please, we would hope that you would talk to them. We can't make them, but we would hope that you would talk to the investigator and so that she can do a full and thorough examination. The investigation came back. The investigation really did not find, the investigation did not find any evidence of any inappropriate action on as far as the coaches, except for that they should have had the door open some while the kids were in there showering and changing. That was the extent of the findings of that investigation relative to any adults that may have been involved. So some on the committee may want to have an adult just because we need to have an adult, and whether the adult has culpability or not, but I don't know if scapegoating is really a smart thing to do. I would watch the March 21st meeting where we talked about the report to the extent that we can, because we are very limited by law as to privacy issues relative to primarily our students. We cannot obviously identify students. We cannot identify information that's going to lead to the identity of students. Our job is to protect the students, even students that you may not be happy with right now. That's our job. And that's what we did. And that's what the superintendent has always done. And that's what we did here. At that meeting, superintendent also ran through a plethora of things that we were doing and are going to do and extend relative to, again, equity, inclusion, cultural things that are very important and that we want our students to be well versed in. And I believe that Lisa, you may want to talk more about that, or I think Adam is here to address some of the things that are going on in high school, so I would like to hear that as soon as possible, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
From March to November, the Globe would like you to believe that the innocent bystanders who just weren't given the records, well, the Globe wanted all of the records. They wanted everything. They wanted all the names. They wanted everything that was in there. And so that results in a lawyers going back and forth to determine what documents are going to be provided and what documents are not going to be provided. What information can be provided, what information cannot be provided. Once again, and if you haven't, read the laws, read the privacy laws. They're very interesting and they're very specific and they're very limiting as to what we can do and say. Once we got that process over, we gave, with the help of the what is it, Keith, the public records administrator?
State supervisor.
And got both sides to agree to a certain level of redactions, and we think at that point it protected our kids to the extent that we can protect them. So that's what's happened. So if you think that we haven't done anything about this or focused on this for the past year and a half, and that we took it in any way lightly, or that we brushed it off, or as some people in here like to say, swept it under the rug, that's a bunch of crap, okay? This and the pandemic have been the primary focus of what we've been doing in here for the past year and a half. You know, when something happens that you don't know about and you can't know about what's going on in the locker room, what you do is you respond and you act and you do whatever you can to hopefully not have that happen again. That's not always going to be successful because we're dealing with a lot of people from a lot of different places and a lot of different backgrounds, and people are going to occasionally slip up and do something that they shouldn't do. You know what? We do the best that we can. But again, to infer that this was kept under the rug, go back and watch every single meeting we've had since last June, because I'm sure none of you that are saying that have done it. By the way, nobody ever called us about it. Nobody ever talked to us about it. We urged people if they had questions to get in touch with us. Nobody ever called me. Nobody ever emailed me. Nobody ever reached out to me. Not one person, while we were trying to get people involved in the investigation, not one person ever reached out. That's okay. Fine, it's all right. But, you know, the funny thing is the Globe writes a story from a perspective. Now, the Globe wants to sell papers. We care about the kids. The Globe doesn't care about the kids who want to sell papers. So the Globe writes a story, and all of a sudden, everybody's like up in arms. Where was everybody the past year and a half? Because we've been doing this for a year and a half.
Nobody knew about it.
Well, you know what? Watch TV, watch the school committee come
I'm
to
sorry, I
meetings.
met with Lisa Dana.
We're not
You
going to...
didn't know about it?
We are not
talked
going to
about
have back and forth from the committee and the audience like this.
You don't know
If
everything.
you are listed to speak, when you speak in turn like everybody else, this is not going to turn into a dialogue. We're yelling at, it's just not. We're not going to conduct this meeting that way. All right, thank you. Arthur has talked about a great deal of the detail here. I think if you, all I can add to that, what Arthur has said in terms of the timeline and whatnot, is that it bothers me more than anything that people are thinking that we covered up something because the Boston Globe said so. I know I spoke about the particulars to the extent that I could at the inclusion meetings. And there are a couple of members here who will undoubtedly remember me bringing that up and talking about it. We used words like abhorrent. We made it clear during the course of our discussions that there were things that could have had racist overtones, homophobic overtones. What we didn't do was give explicit detail. So let's talk about the only things that were not perfectly public. Obviously, the names of the students, which we couldn't. Information that would allow anyone to identify the students, which we could not put out there. Personnel issues, when you talk about, what discussions regarding someone's job, whose ever job it might be. They are not fodder for the public. They simply aren't. If that's something that people disagree with, you need a change in a place much higher than this. And finally, yes, the explicit details, which one, could have allowed students to be identified. And two, and maybe more importantly, think about the fact that, okay, seniors had graduated. The seniors on the team had graduated by the time this came out. By the time we knew about it, they had. You still have juniors moving up, you have sophomores moving up who still have to be part of Danvers High School community, who are going to school every day. Would it have served their emotional or physical safety, particularly their emotional safety? Would it have helped them to have details about any of the conduct that we acknowledged publicly was inappropriate, and like I say, words like abhorrent? Would that have served their emotional safety in this school had we come out with it publicly? So we tried to be as transparent as we could within what the law allowed us and within the goal to foster student safety. And whether you like it or believe it or not, the other thing is that, yeah, there were students who probably participated, if I say willingly or unwillingly, or went along with it. 15, 16, 17 years old. Do any of you, do any of us, sitting out in that audience or sitting up here, you already judged by the worst thing you did when you were 16 or 17 years old? Do you want your, something like this, especially if you weren't willing and you didn't come forward to talk about it because you wanted to put this behind you, do you want that following you around forever? Do you want that to be the fodder for the press? Do you want your schoolmates to know about any of this that went on from your own emotional standpoint? So yeah, we didn't name names and we didn't explicitly talk about the conduct, but we made it perfectly clear that there were issues of racism, issues of homophobia, and inappropriate conduct on that team at that time. And I know that at different times I've talked about the fact that it's not just a problem from the school standpoint. We have seen so much go on in this community in the last year that goes beyond this particular event or what has happened in the schools. And there is disagreement. Some people say, oh, it's just a few people in this town, racism, homophobia, not really a problem, just a few bad apples. Other people think it's pretty systemic and have been vocal about it. And the fact is, I think it's something that as a town, not just the schools, but with town citizens, central government, we have to consider, are we really the welcoming town that we want to be? Are we teaching our students how to act appropriately and what they should be doing and to be accepting of others? We have 15% roughly students now who are not, I believe it's 15%, who are not Caucasian. We are changing as a town. We are changing as a community. We have to open our arms and our hearts and accept that change because it's a good change. It makes us a better community. It makes us stronger. So this is what's happening here and what is happening in this town is something everyone has to deal with. We're trying to deal with it through the ways that Lisa has talked about in the past, and Adam will talk about what's happening at the high school now. The central government is considering a full-time position. I believe it's an equity person versus inclusion, but it might be inclusion. As was recommended by the study group that took place over late last year. I'm sure every department in town is recognizing that we need to look at our hearts and look at who we are and what we're doing. The other factor here that has to be looked at is it's not just about teachers and coaches, it's also about parents and citizens. And do you think that the parents, there are students who apparently on and off, and I think Arthur brought this up, it's not a school-related chat group, it wasn't on school property, it wasn't on school equipment. But my point is, we acknowledge that there were things that students were saying in that chat group that were totally inappropriate. Do you think that their parents knew about it and let it happen? Or do you think their parents were mostly caught by surprise like most of us would have been? Do you think that in some cases what students are hearing in the home, or the attitudes that they're picking up in the home, in the community, in the news, in the world, are impacting the things that they are saying? So yeah, this is a problem that we're trying to deal with in terms of the culture of the school and the district. But it's not just a school problem. It's a problem that goes beyond us into the greater community. We're committed to trying to make a difference here on the front lines. But it's going to take parents, it's going to take citizens, it's going to take groups like our inclusion committee who do wonderful work. I think that we'll get there, but changing a culture is going to take some time. And I realize I've drifted off in a different direction than just the issue of the whether we were, fully disclosed things. We disclosed what we could, but this has opened eyes and minds to, I think, or at least it should, to bigger issues that involve just this room here and just the school district. So that is my point. Arthur, you had asked that we hear from Adam early in the process.
I'd like to hear, because we're talking about it now, I'd like to hear from him now.
All right,
What's going on
and
at the high
maybe
school.
parents will have questions about that too. So Adam, if you can talk about what we're doing.
Well, there you go. It's an effort by the school committee to defend themselves and the school department from any ramifications of this issue. This issue is not new. This issue has been around, whether it's presently being addressed or prior to this it's been addressed. There have been issues in the past that the school committee has swept them under the rug. There are drug issues that are going on in our high school and our middle school. There are teachers that are getting killed in their classroom. There are issues that have been hidden away from the general public. And the one thing that the school committee and our town government has been doing is basically ignoring the issues because they don't want them to come out in the newspapers. Well, the newspapers caught on to this particular issue, and I have been presenting this particular issue on the school committee and the school department for the last, 8, 9 months. There's a segment in each one where I discuss are we taking over the bringing up of our children by the school department? Is this becoming a social system where people hand over their children to the school department because they feel that that's the best place? The parents are the ones that know best for their own children. We need to bring that back. So what I like to do now is present a few segments of what the discussion was at the school committee meeting that was held a week ago, and This was an outcry from the general public. The mother bears came out, and the hockey moms came out. There is a conflict between the information that we are getting right now. So the school committee is continuing to hide information. Now, I appreciate Arthur Skarmus's description of what has happened, but that happened 18 months ago. I mean, that was a continuing story. Where were the Danvers teachers who are now denouncing the handling of the hockey team's alleged misconduct? They didn't know anything about it. The Mass Association of School Committees has come out with a statement that this is an abhorrent activity. This is happening in other communities as well, but we need to react and we need to identify the problem. We don't know about it as residents. The allegation of misconduct go beyond Danvers boys hockey. New MIAA chief says he needs to intervene immediately. It's none of his business. The school committee is responsible for that. So let's get the school committee that will act on behalf of our children instead of hiding things under the rug for public opinion. So if we go to the next segment, David, I would like to go to the comments and the addressing the school committee by the mothers, primarily mothers, and at the end we'll have a very, very concise description of what the heck is going on by Mr. Lopes. So let's go on, David. Let's run the film.
Good evening. I'm Bob Gamer, a member of the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. I have a deep and abiding love for Danvers. I plan to spend the rest of my days in this town. My 4 children are proud graduates of our schools. The appalling events that have taken place, the incidences of racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism are like a blot attaching to my own family. The trauma sustained by the innocent victims can only be described as unspeakable. We all agree that grave mistakes were certainly made. Mistakes were made by the actual perpetrators, students. Mistakes were made by those who should have known better, the adults. The question remains, is retribution the answer? Firstly, as to the students, in my family, would I disown a member guilty of such egregious wrong? Most certainly not. Instead, what is needed is education, a lot of it. It's the culture they live by that needs a whole lot of redressing. As they are at the age when their brains are still in the formative stage, hopefully they will come to understand the wrongs they did and regret them, rather than feel that they are stigmatized for life. A deep apology to the victim, the affected young man, must be in order, must be mandatory. As for the adults, it can be argued, of course, that termination, failure to disclose, remains one of the recourses. Some have already been removed from their positions, others transferred. In the rush to judgment, is this the intelligent play, though? Adults err, sometimes grievously, as obviously happened here. Frankly, they screwed up royally. But I also believe that these are essentially good, decent people. But I also believe that they have the maturity to see better, to learn from whatever transgressions they engaged in. There is such thing as mitigated forgiveness, given that the corrective measures are in place, as you all heard they are, and on a large scale. A firing squad won't cleanse matters. It's revenge, not do justice. As a family, we need to love one another again. As corny as that sounds, it's true. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the only way to heal, which in the end must be our overall object. Toxicity is leading us in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
That's it.
Our next speaker is Karen Ranieri. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Eric. How are you?
I'm fine. I hope you're well.
This is not a direct quote, but this is some of the words from Lisa Dana from the Globe article as part of her response. We do not tolerate racist, sexist, homophobic, anti-Semitic language and actions. It is important for us as community leaders and educators to help our students realize the power of their words and decisions. I submit that not only was it tolerated, that first-hand accounts of violent sexual abuse from minor children were dismissed. It was concealed from families. It was concealed from the community that you folks were entrusted to lead. Instead of ethical and transparent words and decisions, you ensured that these behaviors were institutionalized into the schools by rehiring a perpetrator before the investigation was even complete. The school district paid $44,000 for this investigation, the words of which remain highly redacted even after repeated court battles. I am not, and mine is not, a Danvers hockey family. When I posted the school committee time, I was contacted by some. I heard heartache. To those people who are reliving this now, I'm sorry. To the current families, I send you my sympathy because you've trained and you've invested and you've built a whole hockey family, and you will be unfairly vilified because this was handled poorly. I do not have confidence in the superintendent, nor in the committee members who were involved in this long-term investigation, and I ask that they resign. It is important for us as Danvers families to help our school committee realize the power of their words and decisions. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cindy McMahon. Cindy?
Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm a Danvers resident. I'm a parent of middle schoolers.
Welcome.
And I came out here tonight because I really wanted to support the victim and any students that are suffering because of this, and the future students who are coming up through this school system. I think it's important to be brave, and it's important that we tell our kids, tell the truth. So I have a question based on the Globe article that I understand not everyone on the school committee believes was accurate. But I wanted to know what a resource officer's role is in our school and the interaction that they have with our children. I would like to know why the renewal for this contract for this person was re-signed in the middle of the investigation. I also want to know how long that contract is supposed to last, and I'd like to know what your decision is when it's time for renewal. I'd really like you to explain the decision-making process based on the evidence that you saw and that you heard. Thank you.
Okay, there was a lot to unpack there, and I'll unpack what I can. First of all, the particular, I assume you're referring, Cindy, where are you? I assume you are referring to the hockey coach?
The current resource officer, the community
Right,
resource
but
officer.
in terms of, we don't hire the resource officer first. Okay,
Oh.
He's a police officer.
Who signed this contract?
He was part of the collective bargaining unit with the Danvers police. So it's not someone we go out and hire or interview, we don't need to hire.
Who gets him to be in the school?
Hang on a second. So are you concerned about him still
It's not a
being,
hard question.
are you concerned about him still being the resource officer? You know he's not the coach.
I'm concerned about him being around children.
If I can just add,
Go back to the microphone, please.
Minority children, I thought.
I'm just looking for the truth.
Right, but what is the question?
I don't want you to get defensive. I really just want to know who signed the contract for his renewal. The Globe says that the superintendent signed it
As a coach or as the resource officer?
as the resource officer.
Lisa, you want to speak to that?
No, as the superintendent, I do not sign any contracts with our police department. It's the police department that assigns and works with us to assign a school resource officer.
And as a police officer, as I said, he is subject to the collective bargaining contract with the police. The town has a contract with the police union.
Well, I would ask the school committee to really ask these questions. And if you can please, he's a police officer.
Is he
He is in a position of power.
Officer, Lisa?
He is a mentor to other police officers in our school.
That's true.
You have to put some more thought
He's
into,
no longer the resource officer.
He's in charge of the resource.
yes, he is. He is. Could you say that on record, sir?
Clarification, he's currently the sergeant for the juvenile division and not a school resource officer in any one of those.
Just like 2 weeks ago in our thing that he was a school resource officer. He said it himself, he was a school resource officer. Citizens Academy, we were there.
Okay, not the resource officer.
Well, he goes around telling people he is.
You are the current resource officer.
We have Officer Smith at Danvers High School, there's Officer Skane at the middle school, and then there's Officer Chase at Essex Tech, and then the 3 school resource officers share responsibilities for the 5 elementary schools.
Okay.
And who's their boss?
There's a sergeant in charge of.
Of who? And what is his name?
Steve Baldessari.
That's what I'm saying. There you go. We have extras out there.
There is a difference between the school resource officer and the juvenile division run by the police. It's
I
not-
don't want my kids around him. You think I want my kids around him?
By the way, it's not.
Yeah, it's not our place to decide who the police choose to put in charge of the juvenile division.
Well, think about how you can change that then. That's your role as leadership of our school.
You are the school committee, make it happen.
No one recognized anything wrong with that.
Debbie Joyce is our next speaker.
Good evening, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Debbie Joyce, and I am the proud mother of a Danvers High School hockey player. First and foremost, I want to address all the people who are passing judgment on every child who is on the 2019-2020 hockey team. You may have read things you believe is true because 1, the internet doesn't lie, and 2, journalism isn't twisted to fit an agenda. I'm going to tell you my son's experience on the 2019-2020 hockey team. My son was a freshman. I repeat, he's a 15-year-old freshman on the hockey team. My son was never sexually assaulted or witness to any sexual assault. My son is not a racist or homophobic or part of a white supremacy group, as many social media bullies have stated. I read on social media how the coach was on the group text with the boys and how could he condone the words used in the text chain. Let me enlighten you. The coach was not on the group text with the boys. Coach Baldessari to my child was nothing but welcoming and always made my child feel safe and respected and welcoming to any issue he may have had, and never made my child feel that he couldn't go to him. In fact, he made sure to ask them periodically how the season was going, exactly what a coach should be doing. He added so many positive experiences to my son's freshman year that when these allegations came out, we were shocked and surprised. As many people have shouted, where was the coach? In my opinion, the coach should not be in the locker room when our boys are changing. A child should be able to tell a parent something happened to them. That parent should have been reported the allegation incident. You, Ms. Doherty, are quoting and demanding transparency on the Boston Globe article. As a school committee member and a teacher, you should know that the school's job is to protect the children. Why would you feel that the public shaming of children should be allowed? If you were a parent, you'd be able to understand that a child should be protected by the adults surrounding them. When allegations were made, the school did an internal investigation. Nothing was determined to move forward. People weren't happy with that, so the police department did a significant investigation. Nothing was determined. So again, people weren't happy because they were not getting the answers that they wanted. So a private investigation was conducted and nothing was determined to be wrongdoing or the school with the team, the coaches, and again, people aren't happy. 3 separate parties determined that nothing happened. I would also like to set the record straight. Coach Baldessari was reinstated. Coach to the end of the season, was offered to coach again this season. He made his own decision to not coach this year. Why this was being pursued by the union again, I don't know. 16 of the kids aren't here anymore. The coaches aren't here coaching anymore. The adults bullying and shaming of our families on social media are appalling, and all of you participating should be embarrassed. Get your facts from the sources before you judge, because that is what you are all doing. You have plastered a scarlet letter, which it had a witch trial without an actual trial, and you've become the judge and the jury. You're in fact the bigger bullies in this case. How would you feel if your son or daughter that may or may not have written something or sent a picture of themselves in an inappropriate manner privately, and then it was plastered everywhere and taken out of context? Everyone always has the opinion of not my perfect child. No person in this room is perfect. No person in this room has the perfect child. They make mistakes, and you hope and you pray that they learn from them. It is our job as parents to make sure that they are handling themselves correctly, that they understand how to lose with grace, and that not everyone is deserving of a trophy. There are people that have spoken tonight or will speak tonight that in fact have bullied or have in fact lied on their social media, that they in fact made themselves out to be a victim for attention or to push their own agenda. You need to stop. Did any of you ever think that the mental abuse that these kids have had to withstand and the public ridicule that they have endured and the colleges that they have lost is not enough? When people posted parts of their text threads on social media and senior boys were being told by other senior girls that they should kill themselves, They have had more real-world experience than any adult has had to endure, I'm sure. They have learned and are learning from their teammates' past actions and are trying to grow in a more positive way. You as adults should be setting examples instead of feeding your own agenda on how you feel something should go. This is why young adults commit suicide, false media reporting, and one-sided opinions. The school committee needs to do better for protecting our children, and the superintendent's administration needs to be better at communicating, but more importantly, the public needs to do better. Stop with the shaming and be part of the change. I want to thank you, because you have been there for the boys. I want to thank Adam for being there for the kids, and Lisa, I just wish you would address this a long time ago in a more open forum to get these people to understand these boys' lives are private. You all have no business going at this and thinking that you have the right to know what happened. There's a victim, but there are 21 other kids a part of that. 21 other kids that are victims because they don't agree with one allegation. They don't agree with that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Lisa, you're next. Lisa Zil.
Good evening. First and foremost, I'd like to commend the victim, the man that came forward to talk about what happened to him on school property. And I really want to talk about what happens.
I have to clarify one thing, Lisa, it wasn't school property.
In the locker room.
Not at the school.
Okay.
But that's okay, I'm sorry.
During school sports, under the supervision of a Danvers Public Schools employee. I'm up here to tell him that he is brave and he represents a very courageous soul. More courageous than probably a lot of us sitting in this room, as a young adult, he had the wherewithal to understand what was happening to him, to not blame his teammates, and to understand that they were all victims. Because as adults, we need to do better, and we know better. There is a pattern in this school, and all you have to do is walk down the hallways. And you guys can hide behind the new principal and all of the things that are happening now, but that does not change the fact of what happened in that locker room. Boys that are sexually abused, boys that are bullied, boys that are beaten with dildos on the face because they won't yell the N-word with the hard R or participate in Gay Tuesday, grow up to be abusers. You are all complicit. I have a 10-year-old who's being called gay at a Danvers public elementary school. I have friends whose children are being followed home and being called the N-word because they have dark skin. This is a huge problem. And we're hiring a coach who is not only a police officer, the resource juvenile supervisor, or whatever he is, and also is a figure that these boys are never going to question. All you have to do is walk down the hallway. The hockey team was laughing about it today. They think they've gotten away with something. They think they're protected by this police officer. They think they can do whatever they want.
Did you walk down the hallway today? Because I did.
Let's not have arguments back and forth.
I did, and somebody was ridiculing a hockey player, okay? Calling them names. Who's going to protect the innocent hockey players?
No.
All right?
There is nobody in this room that wants to see any student held accountable for this. We have never asked you for the students' names. And I've met with Lisa Dana, I've met with Steve Martha, I've met with the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee about all of this stuff. So please don't say that no parents have come to you, the school committee, or the superintendent, to talk about this. I've known about this for 16 months. And I let everybody do their investigation. Well, when the police department investigates the police department, it doesn't really turn out that well. Everybody here is just covering yourself. We checked the box. My kid is not safe at school. My middle schooler is not safe at school. I don't want somebody who allowed these types of things to happen to allegedly. Allegedly, Lisa. Make sure you let that be known.
We're not going to have...
I understand that. You have your time up here.
You have to stop.
Well, you've gone over your time.
Allegedly.
I get the passion.
Again, nobody is blaming your child. Nobody is saying anything about your child. Your child is a victim. And whether or not they had to experience this or they saw it, why would this person come up and lie that he was sexually abused? Do you know how much bravery and courage that took?
I don't think, Lisa, none of us up here anyway have said that he didn't, that what happened, what he said happened didn't happen.
So why was he not believed? Why was he offered no support or services or health services or support? Why was he not offered anything like that?
I don't know, and we don't know what interplay happened between that particular student and the school in terms of health
And the school, you don't know what happened between that
No.
student and the school, Eric.
We
You're the school committee
We're
chairperson.
not allowed to understand anything to do with student health or privacy. We have repeated that. I'm not going to get into...
So was any mental health services or support offered to this student?
You don't have the right to know that, and neither do I. It is a private matter between that student, his parents, the school, and maybe his physicians. I don't know, but I'm telling you, you don't have the right to know that. It can't be helped. And you have to respect that. They have a right to their private life beyond...
When they are,
Doesn't matter. They have a right to their private life in terms of...
so you can't say that you offered it to him and what he did or didn't do.
No.
All right, well, I'm done. Thank you.
Mark Smith, please. Is he still here? Mark, are you here?
I'm here, but I'm going to yield since my point of topic was not the topic that's of concern to everybody tonight. So I'll wait till the next school committee meeting. Thank you.
You're the last speaker.
Yep.
Does anyone else
I'd
wish
like
to
to say, she
speak?
came in late, she didn't have
Okay.
I'd like to say something really quickly.
Will you state your name for us, please?
You will. Sorry, I had to write it down because I didn't plan on speaking, so I just wrote it over there. I'm Jessica McGraw. Just to be transparent, I emailed both Lisa Dana and Jason Calavino as soon as the parade happened. And as one of the very few mothers of a student of color who attended DHS, I am beyond disgusted by the actions of the hockey team. To have friends emailing us, texting us to say they cannot imagine how our son must be feeling is both reassuring and sad. The parents and coaches should be ashamed. As far as the district, you say you are going to work to bring more equity and inclusion to the Danvers Public Schools. So I ask you, why did you pull the book stamped from the elementary curriculum? That was done last week by Dr. Dana.
We can talk about that. Mary, anyone in the curriculum want to talk about that?
It will be part of the presentation under our diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was that it was only put on pause at the moment for us to continue to do the work to make sure that we were prepared as adults and working through that book with our children.
So it's only, it's been temporary, basically, it's going to be covered, it's going to be...
So in the moment when we really need to be learning about equity and inclusion, the book stamped was pulled from the curriculum for our elementary students.
Temporary.
Okay.
And it'll give our teachers a chance to understand better how to teach it.
But they worked for that, they worked on that for almost a year now.
I understand.
So they planned it for a year.
It is temporarily, will be monitored. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead. All right, I'm going to go. I told myself I wasn't going to say anything, but I am. Hi, I'm Robin Healy. It's going to be very brief. I have to say that as a parent, at first,
Wait one sec. We have to be clear, you are my wife.
I am, yes, I am Eric Crane's wife. Also, as a parent, I have two children at DHS who've been here since freshman year. They're now in the special ed program. But in any case, I was appalled when I heard this whole thing in the beginning, and I still am. And I was where you all are. Ask Eric. I was where you all are. Oh my God, you're all covering, you're sweeping it under the rug. But you know, when I started thinking about it more deeply, if I have a child on the hockey team, and all of this is released, and it's released that people are getting hit in the face with a sex toy. Say I have a 15-year-old boy
on the hockey team. Do I want people thinking my child has been hit in the face with a sex toy? Do I want people thinking that my child is dancing around naked in a locker room in the dark with his teammates? I don't want that. You know, yes, this is a very horrible situation. And again, I see both sides of it. But that's what it's really come down to. I feel like not releasing information has protected kids. I completely believe this one boy who came forward, I believe that he is telling the truth about what happened to him. And this is all my personal feelings. I also believe that it may have gone on to other people, and they are not stepping forward out of fear of being bullied about it, out of fear of people knowing. However, the vilifying of the entire hockey team, the way people are doing, is just awful. When you spoke, it really hit me. It is, every child on that team was not involved in whatever may have happened. And I don't think it's fair to those kids that this all gets blown all out there like it has been. I wouldn't want to be 15 walking down the hallway and thinking all these other people think I'm dancing naked with my male teammates and getting hit in the face with a sex toy. That's all I got.
Thank you. You can tell they don't tell her what you said.
Yes, he does not tell me.
Are there any other people who wish to speak?
Yeah, Eric? I just
Oh, I'm
like...
sorry, Julie Curtis. My apologies.
No, you don't need to apologize. My name is Julie Curtis, and I'm a citizen of Danvers. And I just have two concerns with this whole thing. And one is that a police officer investigated another police officer. That's, to me, is a conflict of interest. The other thing is that, and Dr. Dana, I'm going to apologize if I'm wrong. I'm going on what the Globe said, that in fact, while this was going on, you in fact voted for him not to keep the job and you gave him a raise. Is that true?
That is not true. I do not.
He wasn't
The contract
given,
for the school
because that's,
resource officer.
again, I'm going to be honest, I don't know, but that is what the Globe said, that he was given a raise. That he kept his job, not as the coach. He kept the job as the resource officer. And if that's true, then I personally have a problem with that.
Right, but he's not the resource officer.
And, you know, that's all I have to say. My heart does go out to the whole team. My heart goes out to both sides. And I agree with the mother over here. And I agree with what this woman just said. But the fact is that, from what I understand, it's been going on for years. And everybody looked the other way. I mean, I listened to the interview on Channel 5 tonight. And the fellow states that an assistant coach walked in and saw what was going on and said, what's going on? And when they said, well, it's J2 state, the assistant coach just said, oh, I don't want to know about it, and he shuts the light off. And, you know, I read this, and my heart went out to everybody. But I just don't understand how this goes on and on. And as I said, I'm going to apologize again. But the Globe says that he was, even after this investigation was going on, he was allowed to keep his job. You know, instead of taking him away from the school, instead of, you know, having these, you know, players, instead of other people having to look at this guy, he was allowed to keep the job. And that's what I can't fathom. And that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you. Okay, Jim Morose. I think it was only a matter of time.
Yeah, I really didn't plan on getting up tonight. My name's Jim Morose.
I think you say that every time.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, it's 2021. You know, we got mass communication, and yet we still have mass confusion. I can't believe the differences of opinion and what's going on. You know, the fake news is, you know, they just want to make money. Social media isn't real. And parents need to parent. Teach it. The school department in the school needs to teach the kids. And let's just, you know, if you have an issue, bring it up to the right channels. Do we all know what the right channels are? Are we supposed to go to mass media? No, you go through the proper channels. You got an issue? Go to the channels. If your child is being abused or bullied in school, then you keep coming until you get a resolution. Don't wait for a meeting. You have to take matters into your own hands at the time it happens. That's all I want to say. I mean, really.
Thank you, Jim. All right, anybody else?
Can I speak again?
Okay.
I have no intention of speaking. No intention at all. No one here, probably, I don't think anyone knows me. I don't know many people here at all. My name is Gabe Lopes. I've lived in Danvers for about 5 years. Obviously, I have 2 beautiful, you know, mixed race, black children, you know, Cape Verdean, half Egyptian. One's 4, the other one's 7 years old. I really want to sympathize with the hockey mom here, the hockey players. They're young, they make mistakes, things happen. But what I think these kids really deserve is a fresh start. A few adults in this room have to take responsibility. Give these kids the second chance they deserve, be honorable, and resign. This is the comments from some of the committee members, tone deaf, just cold.
Yep.
I don't have kids, but if you really want a reset, and hockey moms, I sympathize with you, any athletes, any teachers, anyone here, the kids do deserve a second chance. Some of you folks specifically here, please step down and let the town heal and start over. Thank you.
Anyone else? You're smiling back there. I think all you can think
You
of is...
can't see me, I have my mask on.
Eric, Michael, please go back up. It's not going to be combative.
1 minute. And there's someone else who's already spoken. 1 minute.
Okay, no, that's fine, I get it. I just want to say, again, as a hockey parent, as a mother, if this was happening to your child, and you saw your child's friends that are older, that are graduating, 16, I repeat, 16 of these kids are not at high school anymore. These kids are mentally suffering. These kids are on the verge of suicide. And I just want you people to realize, when you post stuff, and when you put things, and you shame them like this, they have been shamed. They get what they did, or what they wrote is wrong, but my child did not see any physical things happen to anybody. And I just want to make sure, my child did not see that. My child did not do it, he did not witness it. But the older children who are part of it are mentally suffering, and you should appreciate that and feel for them.
Anyone else? All right, this dispenses.
I will stop by later on, okay?
Oh, don't even worry about it. I'm not really seeing people right now.
Thank you.
Just kind of like, I just like to,
Okay.
I have to be alone with my thoughts. But thank you, though.
All right.
I appreciate all the phone calls and everything.
All right. Now, I'm sorry about the interruption, but there was a phone call from John Zavalia's wife. He is still in the hospital, but he's improving, so that's a good sign. I just wanted to make that announcement. You've just heard the parents, the mothers, the community input to the school committee in regard to this one incident. And this one incident is only a symptom of the general apathy that's going on in our school department. I know that I have on my show several episodes showing the decline of the education, the decline of the accomplishments that have been happening on MCAS scores. I've spoken to the school committee persons, and the thing is that they're more interested in replying to a newspaper article instead of communicating their mission, their vision, their expectations for our school children that are enrolled. There's 3,400 students in this town. These are very impressionable individuals. So you've just heard all of the input. Now what I'd like to do is show a brief answer by the school committee. So David, if we can run that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I think that, anybody on the committee, do any of the committee members starting with Jeff have any comments after hearing the public comment?
I appreciate everybody coming and talking and bringing this to light, and I agree with a lot of what was said. I need to process a lot of where we've been on this committee, what we've seen, what we've heard, and where we will go. I'll make a couple of comments. First of all, and the press, of course, leaves as soon as I say this. I actually have a lot of respect for the press. And while I understand social media has its own, I don't know the right term, ecosystem that feeds on itself, I do believe the press, by and large, tries to get to the facts. But what I think sometimes a lot of the press and others, including us, miss is asking the right questions. So a lot of the comments, a lot of the viewpoints are very valid. But are we asking the right questions in all of this? Is the Globe asking the right questions? Are the television stations that are reporting tonight going to ask the right questions? Right? And so this is what I'm trying to say. I'm worried about, are we as a school committee asking the right questions to bring this forward and help us progress? Because sometimes I think we do, and sometimes I don't think we do that as well as we could. And so I challenge all of us to do that. Every television station that was here, I don't know who's still here, one or two, ask those questions, go deeper, right? Make this a larger forum, not just about our school district, other school districts, not just about these issues, but other issues, not just about these specific facts, these kids, these teachers, these issues. How does this happen? What is the process? What is the process that a school committee has to go through to do this? Right? We have specific processes and procedures that we are bound by as elected officials to go through. Some of those might seem like, why would we do this? But they are listed and printed as to what we go through to have to look at those. And so dig deeper on that and challenge not just us, but challenge others who are in positions of leadership to think through this and say, how is this going to happen? Is this a Danvers issue? Is this other school committee issues? How have other school committees, how have other organizations dealt with similar actions that have had to do the same things that we have? And put a spotlight on it. I am fine for a spotlight. I am fine for us to be challenged on our processes that we went through for this. Now, there's some questions about privacy, questions about what is happening in different areas. Those can be debated. Well, let's debate them, bring them out. And I hope the organizations that are challenged with talking about this in the public bring these questions out. And that's my comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And I would agree there's something all of us should and really must take away from not only the comments tonight, but this whole event as we look back on it. And I think you're absolutely right in calling us to challenge ourselves. Robin?
I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say, other than, we have a lot of things in place with equity and inclusion. I want to make sure that we are actually implementing them with fidelity and are making sure and have clear, not just qualitative, but also quantitative data to show that this is working, and not just checking off boxes. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Alice?
Nothing further to add from my original statement, but I do want to just say that I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for my two young kids who will hopefully continue to rise through the public school system. I appreciate all the families and community members coming out and speaking and sharing their stories. And we have received many other emails, so there are families that are continuing to share their stories and their concerns that many of you haven't seen, so I just want everyone to be aware of that as well. But thanks to everyone who has spoken to me.
Thank you, Alice.
Yeah, no, nothing. I mean, I had my say, and I appreciate everybody that came and spoke. Even if we maybe not agree on everything, but I do listen, and I appreciate, again, always when people come and talk to us. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I want to thank everybody who came and spoke to us, and that's even those who, I don't necessarily agree with. I respect everyone's passion. I respect how people want to be heard and how I think people speak because they care. And I can hear a lot of emotion on, regardless of what you chose to say, I know where your hearts are, and I appreciate you coming out. Mr. Lopes, I'm probably not going to resign, I'm sorry. But I wanted to talk to you, first of all, welcome to town. You said you've been here 5 years?
5 years.
Okay. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
I have been here almost 60 years, give or take. Went to the Thorpe School, and then my own daughters went to the Thorpe School. And now I have one grandchild who's just started the Thorpe School in kindergarten, and two who will be following him in a couple of years. The difference is that my grandchildren are half Haitian, and they have made their home here in Danvers like I did, like my parents did, like I did, and now my daughter. And maybe of all the things that were said tonight is this idea, to me anyway, is the idea that, we're cold or that we don't care. I assure you that I want a great educational experience for all our students of every color, of every race, of every sexual orientation, of every preference, of every gender identity. And I want us to be better as a school system and a community at welcoming all people, treating all people with respect, and educating all students. I've been on the school committee 20 years, a little more than 20 years. I am still here because I have that passion to talk about. So I want you to know especially, and to everybody else, that I am committed to the same things that I think all of us as parents are, even though I'm a grandparent. I want these beautiful grandchildren who I love dearly, and all of the children in this community to have the best experience they can. And to the extent that that requires self-reflection on my part, reflection on us as a school committee, reflection on the administration, we all need to be looking every day at what we can do better, and I am no exception to that. So I hope that, all I ask is that don't think that I don't care. That's all I ask.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate you sharing that you have Asians in your family. That's fantastic. I'm not here to question the intention or the desire. I see a major lack in qualification. You guys are way out over your skis. I don't think you're all equipped to handle what's happened in the last year and a half.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
Grandchildren, it doesn't take away from the time you've lived in the town. There's a qualification, there's an awareness, and there's some, emotional intelligence that I think is really missing in this room. Even a great chef can ruin an omelet. No one is immune from making massive mistakes, but there's a difference between trying to make a good omelet and creating a welcoming and a warm community, and addressing the community in a way that isn't cold, condescending, or tone deaf. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Beyond that, I think what I said in the beginning of the meeting in terms of my thoughts about this are pretty clear. And again, self-reflection will be the word of the day. So now we're going to move on to the COVID statistics.
Wow, that was exhausting, because the community finally came out and asked the proper questions, and there were no answers. The executive session that was ordered in the beginning for a half an hour was more to organize the school committee to answer the questions, and Art Skarmus was named as the spokesman. And I appreciate Art's history lesson, but that history should have been addressed 18 months ago. Not now, not tomorrow, but 18 months ago. Well, as I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, is that the Danvers School Committee, who you just listened to, has scheduled a meeting for this last Monday, which was November 15th. And that was during the same time as the town meeting, special town meeting, was being held at the field house. So we went to the special school committee executive session, and all it says on here is there'll be an executive session of the Danvers School Committee on Monday, November 15th at 5:45 p.m., room D102 at Danvers High School. Well, even this executive session that was called was improper in an open meeting law violation as well. This executive session was basically a continuation of the one that was held a week ago, where they came back and they had no idea of what they talked about. They wouldn't divulge that information. Also, at this November 15th meeting, the Danvers School Committee took no action regarding the future of Superintendent Lisa Dana after meeting for 90 minutes in executive session Monday night. Chairman Eric Crane said no committee members made a motion to place Dana on leave and no vote was taken. The motion was made a week ago by Robin Doherty. They talked her out of it and they didn't follow through. Lisa Dana needs to address this issue. Now, what Eric also reported from last night's meeting, there is no change in her personnel status, Crane said to reporters after the meeting, which was closed to the public. The school committee held the executive session after a raucous meeting last week, which several members of the public called for Dana and school committee members to resign over their handling of the allegations of racism, sexual, and homophobic misconduct during the 2019-2020 Danvers High School hockey team. That incident was during the graduation parade, which was instigated or inflamed by a Trump slogan that was a flag that was flown from one of the vehicles. That's what started this whole thing. After that, they started going to the hockey team because that was convenient to divert the attention. As you remember, the Danvers had a committee that was responsible for placing the thin blue line flag as a remembrance for the fallen police officers and firefighters last fall. Well, as a result of this particular incident that happened during the parade, there was a report to the town manager of a concerned citizen that didn't like the Trump flag flown during the parade that was held at the graduation. Well, I understand, and I was told, that this report was by someone very close to the town hall. And I believe that that issue has exploded into the request by the townspeople for handling the thin blue line flag and to be flown by the town of Danvers. The Danvers parents have finally come up and exposed this situation. And the thing is that during the discussions that we all sat through, there was one individual that reported these sexual attacks, the issues with the hockey team, and as far as I have been reported to, or I have investigated, that is the only individual. So I don't know what the truth is. The school committee and the school department needs to come out and present a situation to the general public, not just to their own community in the school system. And the issues that I found is that the allegation of misconduct go beyond Danvers boys hockey. Yeah, fine. That's happening all around our communities on the South Shore and the North Shore. Danvers boys, the new MIAA chief says he needs to intervene immediately. Where the heck was he 18 months ago? The Danvers teachers denounced handling of the hockey team's allegation of misconduct. Where were they 18 months ago? I have been reporting on this for over a year, and the thing is that Mass Association of School Committees holds a maskless convention in Hyannis with the Commissioner Jeff Riley, who is forcing children to wear masks in schools. Our school committee has never been independent. Every time there has been a question raised in regards to the conduct of the school, the performance of the school, and the expectations of our school department, they claim that they are being forced into a Board of Education by the state to perform different tasks for the education department. Why on earth do we even need the school committee if that's what's going to be happening? So, Mr. Lopes, I totally agree with you. My opinion is a little bit different, but I believe that certain school committee members and the school administration need to resign and move on to someplace else because Danvers cannot be rescued by these people. So, thank you very much for listening. I thought this was an important factor for our community, and I wanted to get this thing out without influence of the newspapers and the articles that have been written, and there's been a lot of them. So, good night, Danvers. Good afternoon, Danvers. I appreciate your time, and I hope this is not too long, but this needed to be said, and I hope everybody sees it. Thank you very much. Good night, Danvers.